Good evening, everybody. I had a bit of a tiring day today, but the Lord has redeemed it as He does. I wanted to make this video and speak a little bit on the subject of being prepared for greater tests, greater testing. And I was really thinking about the life of Christ in this, specifically the cross. There is a sense in which the cross was the purpose for which Jesus came to this earth. He came and he knew that at the end of his life, he would have to face that final hurdle, that final challenge, that great test and overcome it. And this was more than a life and death matter. This was the whole of the human race and the universe hanging in the balance in this one moment. I don't think any of us fully understand the gravity of what occurred on the cross. It is the great mystery of heaven. We catch glimpses of light here and there, but the fullness, I think, is veiled from human eyes, and the Lord reveals more and more as we walk. But I was just thinking of this idea because the life of Christ is obviously a pattern for each of us to follow as well. He is the example of our spiritual journey. It speaks about how Jesus actually grew in favor and wisdom with God and with man as well. And that's demonstrating to us the path of spiritual growth. Jesus himself grew in a sense spiritually, even though he was fully God. When he came to the earth, he did not utilize his divine privileges in the sense of he did not empty himself of his deity or his ability that he had as deity, but he did not exercise the privilege of using those things. Instead, he relied on the power of the Holy Spirit and the Father to lead a way for us, to show us the path to overcome temptation. He was our forerunner. So that means that he lived as a man, just like you and me. Even though he was fully God, he lived as a human being. And when he overcame temptation, it was by the power of the Holy Spirit, by depending upon the Father. It was not by him being God. He wasn't utilizing his godhood or his deity to overcome the temptations that came his way. And because of that, he is a faithful high priest who is able to sympathize with our weaknesses, for he himself has gone through the trials and the testings, and through that he learned obedience. And the point being is the trials of Christ grew stronger and stronger as he himself grew stronger and stronger in the Spirit. So the things that he faced when he was 12 years old, sitting in the temple and was asking questions to the rabbis and the doctors and giving answers, the trials he was facing at home during that time were not the same level of trials that he was facing near the end of his life. And the ultimate test, the ultimate trial, right, is the cross. All his life he's facing trials, but they're being given to him by the Father at each point in his life. He's being tested in all ways that we are, and yet he is without sin. And the Father acts the same way with us. We're his children. We're engrafted into Christ, and he loves us just as he loved Christ. As it says, if we obey him, he loves us with the same love that he had to Jesus, which is an amazing truth. And so he acts towards us in the same manner, as in he's giving us trials for us to overcome, for us to grow. When we overcome a trial, a temptation, we actually grow. There's virtue being exercised through us. There's something that is occurring in our very inner being. There is a certain character that is being expressed, and that is the conformity to the image of God. Not to say that Jesus grew more into the image in that sense, but I'm just expressing that he faced spiritual testings and trials just as we do in an increasing level, and that last one was the most ultimate one. And so the Father, throughout the life of Jesus, was preparing Jesus for that point. Many of us, therefore, are in a stage of preparation, and a large portion of our life may actually just simply be preparation for that very thing God has called us to do. We don't know. It's an honorable thing to be used by God, And it may be that the Lord wants to use you for one particular thing, and your whole life you've been sent for this particular purpose, and you are being trained and prepared so that when that day comes, you will not be ill-equipped. What that means, though, is you have to be faithful in the small things and make sure that you reach that point and will not fail in the time of pressure and testing. In John 12:27, Jesus says, "Now my soul is troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour." And he's talking about the cross and being handed over. Then he says, "But for this purpose I came to this hour." So Jesus is saying he came to earth for the purpose of this hour. He has been sent by the Father for this reason, for this purpose. It's kind of like the tennis was here in Australia just a few weeks ago. And in a tennis match, right, you have those initial matches, the preliminary matches in order to get to the grand final, the grand open, the final match, right? And some people are being knocked out when they lose and the winner goes forward. But some of the early matches, they kind of don't matter as much. It's just trying to find position and who's going to verse who and whatnot. And that's kind of like with us, the trials that we get early on, right? They're kind of like the really early matches where it's not if you lose, you're immediately out of the competition, but it does determine, what kind of things you'll face, what kind of opponents you'll face later on until you whittle it down. And there is the big final match, right? Each of us are kind of facing that in our life. And regarding this, Jesus at this time was telling his disciples to be praying and to be watchful that they will not enter into temptation. And Jesus practiced what he preached. Everything he taught, he did first. Jesus himself was a man of prayer and he was a man of watchfulness. He was being alert. The Father was teaching Jesus to always be alert and to always be prayerful. We too are to learn that lesson. We're to always be on our toes, spiritually speaking. We're not to be falling asleep. We need to be prayerful, and not just prayerful, but watchful. And to be watchful means to watch in prayer, and it also means to be watching our surroundings, the providence of God in our life, the things that are coming, to be listening to what's coming our way, not to just kind of pray in the closet and then leave off and just do whatever, just kind of zone out and tap out. No, we need to be paying attention. Now, when Jesus is praying and he's just before he sweats blood from the intensity of the prayer, right? This is the great prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane. This is the big battle. This is where the war is won, is in the garden. Before he gets to the cross is the big final battle of his life, is that prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane. And he's bleeding, right? And just beforehand, an angel strengthens him because it's war. He needs that strength. And we see he's praying against the temptation. He's praying that the Father's will be done. He's asking for another way and he's yielding to the Father's will. And in the wilderness, in Matthew 4:11, we also see that after he has gone through the time of testing in the wilderness, he is ministered to by angels. It says, "Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and ministered to him." Now he needs that ministry because he's just gone through a battle. He's just gone through war. He needs strength. He needs to be revitalized. He needs to be bandaged up and healed in some sense. Not literally. I'm just saying he's gone through a fight, right? He's gone through an actual war. He's stood face to face with the devil and he has overcome. He is overcome, and he's done it in the power of the Spirit and reliance on the Father. And that's what we will face, our trials and temptations. These are the big battles of our life. Each of us are being prepared for particular trials that are going to come our way, where we need to stand firm in the Lord, and we need to be founded in prayer and watchfulness. Christ was founded in prayer and watchfulness. And it was his obedience that was being tested here. It was his will that was being tested to see whether he would yield to the Father in voluntary submission, which is expressing love, because love is the yielding to God, right? It's the giving up to God. It's saying, not my will, your will be done, Father. Out of love, it's expressing that love. It's laying down your life, your will, your being for God and His glory. And so love is not simply a force. It is a choice that must be exercised. You actually have the choice to choose whether you will love or not. And love is seen in action, not just in feeling or in desire. And Jesus is expressing His love to the Father in the garden when He's praying, not my will, your will be done. He's expressing His love to the Father, and He's making that choice. He's exercising His will to yield it, to give it to the Father, that the Father's will may be done. And so He's overcoming temptation. When we overcome temptation, ultimately what every test of temptation is a test of, will you obey or disobey God's will? Will you yield to the will of God, submit to the will of God, overcome the temptation coming your way, the trial and the test, or will you yield to sin, the temptation? And Jesus, I believe, He abode in the Father by His will. In the sense of, Jesus was always with the Father because He was always choosing to obey the Father. He was remaining and abiding in the Father because He chose to yield His will, to not do His own will, to deny His will, and to do the Father's will. And as a result, the Father was always with Him. It was not just how do I say it? It's more than just a mystical union. It wasn't just automatic in that sense. It was a voluntary giving of Himself, of His manhood, up to God, that He would remain abiding with Him. There was real ramifications for the temptations that were coming Jesus' way if He was to yield to them, because He was living as a man, as a perfect man as well. And I'm not denying that He's God. He is God too, and He is also fully God whilst being a man. But I mean, He's also yielding His will to the Father to remain in Him. And when Jesus says that we are to abide in Him, one means of us abiding in Him is through us yielding our will to Him. It's us giving our will over to Him. Sin is when we leave off abiding in God. We transgress. We don't remain. We go outside, right? We move past the boundary. If we're abiding, we're not moving beyond the boundary that's been set for us. So to abide in God, to abide in Jesus, to abide in the Lord, is to yield to Him constantly, 24/7. And that way we can always be in His presence. Pray that this has been helpful. May you all be blessed by it. Have a good day in Jesus' mighty name.